Hello and welcome back to the Empowered Hormones podcast. I'm your host, Sheridan Decker, and I'm so excited to have you guys here with me today. So, for those who haven't been following along with my life, which most of you probably not, but you see glimpses on Instagram, I'm slowly setting up my podcast recording. I want to say studio, but it's not studio, it's just my office and been playing with backgrounds, what it looks like, sounding. It's still quite echoey in here. So hopefully in another one or two episodes, I will have that nailed. But the thing is, I have a house and my house has polished concrete floors, which is great, but they're quite echoey. And then when you have a new office space and then the sound bounces around, anyway, don't have curtains in yet, just put a rug in, getting there slowly, put a beanbag in, which is guys who are watching on YouTube will be able to see behind me, finally got some furniture in as well, which is great. So you can see that slowly putting my books in there, filling that out bit by bit. So it's all fun and games. Anyone who's moved into a new space will know how that feels. But then also when you're a creator, it's like, what's the lighting like? And what's the sound like? And do things echo? And where are my cameras? Anyway, bit going on there. Now, to today's topic, probiotics. So, this is one I get asked about a lot. Do I take probiotics or what's the best probiotic for my gut? So, I want to reframe this from the top. If you're waking up, your stomach's relatively flat, and this is quite normal. Like, this is what I see a lot. Women wake up, stomach's quite flat, they go to the gym, they feel good, but by 3, 4 p.m., as the day goes on and they're eating more food, they get more and more pregnant looking. So that bloating slowly increases. The bloating can get so bad that it can actually hurt to wear your clothes, right? So you're getting this painful bloating. On top of that, you've got brain fog, there's constipation, and a lot of the time women are just so tired. But because you guys are all proactive, you're not ignoring it, you really want to fix your gut health, you go online and you start, looking at probiotics, start doing gut healing protocols, trying different supplements. I see a lot of women drop hundreds of dollars because probiotics are probably one of the most expensive things to be buying in the gut health space, primarily because think about what they are. They're a culture, they're a bacteria, okay, which is quite fragile as opposed to, let's say, a prebiotic, which is just a fiber, a lot harder to wreck. So maybe, you start taking probiotic, you feel like you're doing everything right, you're trying to eat a lot cleaner, but instead of getting better, your symptoms get worse. So you push through a bit more, like, is this normal? Is this the gut just readjusting? What is actually going on here? And today I'm going to explain why this gut healing is generally making things worse, especially when it comes to probiotics. The very first thing that impacts probiotics or impacts your ability to be able to utilize them or actually tolerate them is SIBO. So, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. I've talked about this a lot and I will continue to talk about this a lot because it is one of the most undiagnosed conditions, for better use of word, but it's also something that a lot of people don't believe the testing. There's different testing out there. They don't know whether they have to test for it. Some gastros will test for it. Some GPs might mention it. Most of them won't. So then you go through this whole gut journey, which you're hyperreactive to things when you've got SIBO. So anything that would normally work for someone who just has a normal dysbiosis will not work for you. So you kind of go through this whole journey before you try and get to identifying, is it SIBO? What type of SIBO is it? And then understanding that, oh, this was linked into a lot of my IBS symptoms. Now, we're really often sold this idea that gut issues are caused by a lack of good bacteria. So, the issue with this is that even though that can be true, gut issues are commonly, I don't know if cause is the right word, but exacerbated by lack of good bacteria, which can happen through diet, stress, birth control, medications, all those things will lower bifido and lacto, of course, absolutely. But if you have SIBO, you don't have a lack of bacteria in general. So the issue is with the generalization. So you need to be very specific, and this is where microbiome testing comes in as to what bacteria am I lacking and what ones do I have enough of? And are they good species? Are they bad species? Are they inflammatory species? SIBO is not a lack of bacteria, it's generally more of an overgrowth of bacteria. So the majority of your gut bacteria are supposed to live in your large intestine, whereas your small intestine, where you absorb your nutrients, tends to have less bacteria. In SIBO, look, there's so many root causes of SIBO. I'm not going to dive into it today because it's not the point of this episode, and I've got episodes around that. But it's really, really important to understand that SIBO can be caused by low stomach acid, poor digestive capacity, stress, gastritis, when the bacteria that are supposed to be in your large intestine migrate up into your small intestine. So there's so many elements around it, poor motility, damage to the vagus nerve, like all those things play into it. But generally, when we have too much bacteria in that small intestine, that's when you guys are getting your IBS symptoms, because even good bacteria can cause fermentation and gas, all right? So when you're throwing a probiotic, so you're going, yes, Sheridan, I am taking a healthy, like I'm taking good bacteria, it's going to help my bloating and gas. Well, these bacteria in your expensive probiotic, they start fermenting the carbohydrates you've eaten in your small intestine. This fermentation produces gas. That gas gets trapped, and that's what causes that painful distended rock hard bloating. So you're not bloated because of the food per se, you're bloated because your gut is inflamed and overgrown. Big difference, okay? So let's circle back because I feel like that was quite a bit of information. Small intestine bacterial overgrowth. So you have stomach, small intestine, large intestine. Large intestine is where a lot of your bacteria should be. Small intestine, not really a lot of bacteria. Beneficial bacteria can still cause symptoms and they can still overgrow, okay? This is why a microbiome test is so important, so that you know what you're low in and you know what you need to feed and you know what you must avoid feeding. So if you start taking probiotics with bacteria and you're dropping billions of new bacteria straight into a small intestine that's already overcrowded and overgrown, plus you're taking prebiotics which feed bacteria, this is when you guys are getting symptoms. If you have SIBO, prebiotics and probiotics as a general rule are off the board, okay? The research backs this up. A lot of these bacteria can lead to this overcolonization. These can produce D-lactic acid, which can be toxic to the brain and can cause things like that brain fog on top of your bloating and your fermentation. Whereas when we take people off probiotics and we treat the bacterial overgrowth instead, we see a resolution in symptoms. Now, stopping probiotics tends to make your symptoms better in a SIBO case. Does that make sense? So there's quite a bit going on there, but you can't guess with this stuff and you also don't need to be under the impression that you can never take probiotics and never take prebiotics. But we can use specific strains when you've got SIBO, definitely, and specific prebiotics when you've got SIBO. So first thing, test, don't guess. You cannot guess which bacteria are overgrown. And obviously you shouldn't be throwing random probiotics and ferments and foods at a gut that is very inflamed and fermenty and gassy, bloated, constipated, all those things. So first, run a lactulose breath test. That's the gold standard for diagnosing SIBO. That's what I use in clinic with my clients. You drink a sugar solution and we measure the gases you breathe out. This just tells me, if bacteria are fermenting in your small intestine, what kind of gases they're producing and how severe the overgrowth is. Information we really, really need. Second, run a comprehensive stool test. We look at the large intestine to see if you have parasite infections, yeast overgrowths, or are missing beneficial bacteria. Once we have this data, this protocol is generally the opposite of what you've been doing. You stop the probiotics and fermented food, so we remove the fuel from the fiber. We eradicate the overgrowth, so targeted herbal antimicrobials, which clear the bacteria out the small intestine. And because really, people need to think of it like this: we have to weed the garden before we can plant the new seeds. So, stop probiotics, eradicate the overgrowth, support your nervous system and motility. If you're constantly in a state of stress, your gut will not work, okay? Work on that motility and clear out. If there's methane bacteria, clear that out because that is the driver of what's going on here. Support your enzymes. If histamine is an issue, we might use a low histamine diet, might use a DAO enzyme, we might use like HCl, stomach acid support. We need to be able to break down that food because, again, that food is a fuel for the fermentation. So that's feeding the bacteria. If and when we're going to use probiotics, we use targeted strains. So a lot of the research will show us that for methane dominant SIBO, we want to reduce these archaea populations, so reducing bloating and improving that motility, so those bowel movements. The most promising probiotics we see good results in clients is specific strains of your lactobacillus, your bifidobacterium, and your spore-based ones. Very specifically I like and I work with is lactobacillus, trying to get my words out, Lactobacillus reuteri, DSM. So Biogacia is a really common brand that we will use. It's highlighted as one of those ones that lower methane and help reduce constipation. Saccharomyces boulardii, there's mixed research on it. Generally, as a rule of thumb, it's antibiotic resistant. It's great after if you're taking like rifaximin or antibiotics to treat the SIBO. But I see mixed results with it. Some people works really well in, other people not so much, whereas the Reuteri generally has quite positive outcomes. And then soil-based or spore-based probiotics, that's something you might have taken Megaspore over the years or anything with those bacillus species in it. They're really resilient. They pass through the stomach acid to the small intestine, and they help reduce that abdominal pain and bloating. So it depends on the person, depends on your symptoms, depends on your SIBO type as to what probiotics, and then also if you can handle a prebiotic like PHGG, which will help with the motility, which is going to help in clearing the bacteria as well. For those as hydrogen dominant SIBO, generally we're trying to avoid lactic acid, which can worsen fermentation. So we want to avoid that and also use those that help break down biofilms to support removing the bacteria. Again, spore-based ones, yeast-based ones, especially if there's loose stools, diarrhea, are generally going to be the best option. Like I said, your Saccharomyces boulardii or your bacillus strains. I know this can feel overwhelming, especially if you've spent like years like trying to work out what is causing your IBS, doing dietary changes, taking probiotics. Maybe you've tried rifaximin, maybe you've done SIBO testing and it hasn't worked. But what I want to ask you is, have you looked at the full picture? Have you run a complete microbiome mapping? Like, have you looked at root causes from the large intestine? Have you tested the small intestine? Have you assessed stomach acid, digestive enzymes, stress, looked at medication, looked at how your vagus nerve and migrated motor complex is working, and is that working properly? Yeah. I know. I'm overwhelmed just telling you about, let alone being in the boat of you guys. And I see with my clients who have SIBO, they just go, Sheridan, there's so much going on here. And I'm like, I know. And it takes time, guys. I really want to enforce that. Give yourself a solid 6 months. This is why I work with women over a 6-month time frame, because you've got so many little areas to address. And when you catapult from person to person, trying thing to thing, you have no continuity. You have no follow through, you have no plan, you have no dietary plan, which plays a really, really big role in this as well. So stop taking your probiotics, assess what's going on in your gut, and get some help. So if you do want to get some one-on-one help, jump on a free Zoom call with me. You can book it below in the show notes, and then we can just brainstorm what you've tried, what's worked, what hasn't worked, how to overcome your bloating, and we can heal your gut for good. Otherwise, guys, DM me on Instagram, Sheridan_functional nutrition. Subscribe, rate, review the podcast. I love hearing from you, and please reach out if you need help.